That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, not gonna lie, this is not going to be an enjoyable video to record at all. This is going to suck because a lot of these wide receivers, I don't want to say a lot, there are a couple of wide receivers on this list that I have on a ton of dynasty teams, and we just had to lower them down the rankings significantly over there on Patreon. I mean, we updated those rankings quite a bit. They just went lower and lower and lower every time we updated them throughout the season. We're going to be talking about what we're doing with these wide receivers now, whether or not we think it's a good idea to be buying low or just washing our hands entirely. But of course, before we dive into it, please go down there, drop a like on this video, leave a comment letting me know one player that has really fallen down your rankings in Dynasty Fantasy Football this season. I'll probably be doing a running back version of this video as well, so let me know if you want to see that. Let me know who you think should be on that. And of course, subscribe to the channel, but only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. I'm telling you right now, if you don't play Dynasty, this channel is not going to be for you. Then you're going to be really annoyed with us in a month if you don't play Dynasty. But I think that should be it. Oh, yeah. And of course, go join the flock on Patreon. Over there on Patreon, you can get access to our Dynasty rankings, get into a Dynasty league with us, get in our Dynasty group chats, and I mean, get an in-depth podcast breaking down your own Dynasty team. We have the Fantasy Flock Network meetup on January 15th in Tampa, Florida. So please make sure you're coming out to that at 3 p.m. More details should be posted soon. That's it. Let's go into this, and let's lead it off with a wide receiver that, let me pull up the official statistics he's going to end this season with. I know that obviously he has the injury, so it's hard to draw much from this at all, but let's talk about Juju SmithSchuster. Y'all know a wide receiver that I wasn't just high on this last offseason. 2 off seasons ago, I was going through and I was telling everybody that he was the best value in Dynasty Fantasy Football, that you were going to be able to buy low on Juju SmithSchuster based on the Ben Roethlisberger injury, as well as the injuries to Juju himself. You were going to be able to take advantage of the Antonio Brown narrative that Juju couldn't exceed without Antonio Brown in that offense. And you could take advantage of, I mean, just selling high on Deontay Johnson and buying low on a true alpha receiver in Juju SmithSchuster. Well, back in 2020, last year, he comes out, not sure if you track this at all, but I mean, he has a very bad season. He doesn't even get to 800 receiving yards. He gets 8 receiving touchdowns, 91 receptions, but he played the entire year. So if you're looking at his per game numbers in 2020, he was a bad wide receiver. He was a bust, and we had to move him down our rankings just slightly. I wasn't really telling anybody to go through and trade for him this past offseason because the writing was on the wall. And he started off this season not looking like anything was going to change. I mean, he comes out 4 receptions, 6 receptions, 3 receptions. But a big thing is, as we've come to expect with Juju SmithSchuster, I mean, the efficiency isn't going to be there either, knowing that this is going to be a slot wide receiver that really needs to have that elite volume in this offense if he's going to succeed. He's never going to be the big play wide receiver he once was. And yeah, I mean, just goes out for the year with the shoulder injury. And now it's an intriguing case with Juju. I'll say a couple things here. A, he's 25 years old. And I know a lot of people aren't going to think that's important. Let's go to a player that's on his same team. Let's go over to Deontay Johnson. Obviously, Deontay Johnson drafted in 2019. I mean, you would think that he's, I mean, definitely going to be younger than Juju SmithSchuster. Deontay Johnson's older than Juju SmithSchuster. Terry McLaurin's older than Juju SmithSchuster. I mean, you have someone like Van Jefferson, who it's his 2nd year in the NFL. He's older than Juju SmithSchuster. So Juju is an incredibly young wide receiver still. I want to put that out there. But the situation's not going to be good for him this upcoming year, because he actually went back to Pittsburgh this season on a 1-year prove-it type contract. And he signed that deal, I believe it was for $8 million. But now what kind of contract is Juju going to be looking at? I don't know the answer to that question. I think probably he's getting $3 to $4 million, because you also have to look at it and saying, I know I was making fun of so many people for this, and I just have to come out here and I have to apologize. I was dead wrong. If you remember a big narrative in that 2019 Dynasty offseason, a lot of people are coming out saying, Mason, you're wrong on Juju. He cares more about his YouTube channel. He cares more about his TikTok than he does football. And I was saying, okay, boomer, shut up. That's not true. It doesn't matter that he has a YouTube channel. He can be a successful NFL wide receiver, and he can do TikTok, and he can do YouTube. He can do all of it. It's 2021. Well, I think that y'all were right. I was wrong. I think that clearly the incentives for Juju SmithSchuster were not in line with football. And I think that he is, a player that brings a lot of noise with him. He does bring a lot of questions to the locker. I don't know what teams are going out there and being willing to pay Juju SmithSchuster $8 million and making him an every down player here. For those reasons, despite him being incredibly young, I have plummeted Juju SmithSchuster down our dynasty rankings. Juju right now in our rankings, I'm not going to say it out loud because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing how low he is. But he is a wide receiver 4 in our dynasty rankings, and I think that's fair. Of course, you prefer him a little bit more in a PPR format. Hopefully, he finds himself a favorable landing spot in free agency. I just don't know, what's a good landing spot? What are we looking for? I know Kansas City was rumored last offseason. I would be very surprised if that actually comes true this offseason, unless he is getting just a $2 million contract and they're really not having to invest much into him at all. I would love to know your opinion. I'm very biased with Juju SmithSchuster. I paid close to the top price for Juju in a lot of leagues and just have seen that investment worsen and worsen and worsen every offseason. Now let's go to our next wide receiver that, we had Dakota going out there over on Patreon telling us that our dynasty rankings were trash, ranking DeAndre Hopkins as a top 20 wide receiver still. He was telling us that DeAndre Hopkins needs to be viewed as Julio Jones was last offseason. And I'm going to push back on that. I'm going to say that is blasphemous. I'm going to say that if you're looking at DeAndre Hopkins with the consistency that we have had, throughout his entire NFL career, to say that with a 29-year-old wide receiver, it's a completely different scenario, with Julio Jones last offseason versus DeAndre Hopkins. So I can tell you right now, with Julio Jones about to be 33 years old and DeAndre Hopkins 29, I'm not going to have DeAndre Hopkins as low as we had Juju SmithSchuster in Dynasty last offseason. There's no reason for that with DeAndre Hopkins as a wide receiver that's still attached to one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. This is still an offense that you expect to be far above league average going forward. And DeAndre Hopkins is going to be attached to Kyler Murray. None of these injuries I have to worry about, over the next 2 years. I think with DeAndre Hopkins, he's perfectly fine to continue to roster as a wide receiver 1 for the short term in Dynasty Fantasy Football. In your 2022 redraft formats, if you're getting in a best ball league right now, I would still be drafting DeAndre Hopkins as a top 12 wide receiver. And it's very different with 2 elite players in their position that got injured this season and what I'm doing with them in Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you're looking at a Derrick Henry, who of course crushed DeAndre Hopkins on a points per game basis. Every game that DeAndre Hopkins, played for Arizona, he didn't go out there and win that for you. Whereas it was the complete opposite end of the spectrum with Derrick Henry, where if he was good to go and you put him in your lineup, you were most likely winning given the fact that he was the running back 1 on a points per game basis. And with all that being said, I'm going to be moving Derrick Henry down my rankings more than I'm moving DeAndre Hopkins. Because if you're looking at Derrick Henry, while yes, he is a younger running back than, DeAndre Hopkins is at wide receiver. Derrick Henry is going to be 28 this offseason, about to be 28 in about a month. The running back fall off with their age, that's a very real cliff that we have to be worried about. Very, 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 very few running backs we've been able to see handle large workloads once they get to 28, 29 years old. Historically speaking, those running backs just fall off a cliff and their bodies can't keep up. Where at wide receiver, it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Wide receiver, you see those receivers age gracefully to be 31, 32 years old and still producing at wide receiver 2 levels. So with DeAndre Hopkins, I may actually take this advantage to go through and buy low on him because, Dakota's the perfect example over there on Patreon telling me that we have DeAndre Hopkins ranked too high. Maybe I can see moving DeAndre Hopkins down to about wide receiver 21. But if you're asking me, Mason, do you want DeAndre Hopkins or Elijah Moore? Y'all know I loved Elijah Moore in last year's rookie draft, but I'm always willing to go out there and I'm always willing to invest at a discount into the veteran wide receiver. I would rather sell the veteran wide receiver too late and sell the running back veteran too early than the opposite. So I may actually be buying low on DeAndre Hopkins here. Now, our next receiver are a pair of receivers that, we faded coming into this season Happy we did so, and I'm probably going to be fading them again, but I want to put a massive asterisk on this. Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. Now with Jerry Jeudy, he didn't fall down my rankings too much. We already had Jerry Jeudy far below where most people did, because I can sit here and I can admit, yeah, Jerry Jeudy is a great talent at the receiver position. If you were going to go through and rank the top 32 receivers in the NFL, Jerry Jeudy would probably be in the top 15 on that list from a pure talent standpoint alone. But as we talk about all the time, I'm not in the business of going through and playing NFL general manager. I'm not ignorant enough to think that, I actually have a say of what's going to happen on the field. No, we're out here trying to predict fantasy football points. And when we were looking at this situation in Denver, saying they were going to have some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL, and there was going to be so much target competition with Courtland Sutton, Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick, Albert O, the running backs, that this was the situation you were avoiding entirely despite the talent. Now, I'll say in the case of Jerry Jeudy, I think he's clearly proven that he is still that top talent most people projected him to be, where Courtland Sutton, y'all know I've been low on Courtland Sutton for a very long time, going back to that 2019 Dynasty offseason. If y'all remember that 2019 year, Courtland Sutton's second season, he was drafted out of SMU in 2018. A lot of people were going through and they were saying, Pro Bowl Courtland Sutton, top 3 Dynasty startup pick. Obviously not overall, but top 3 rounds. And we were saying that's horrible analysis with Courtland Sutton. Hopefully MFL is going to load it up this far back so I can pull up these statistics from 2019. And a lot of people were looking at the fact that if you looked at the counting stats for Courtland Sutton, his second season, they were very strong. If you're looking at the counting stats, I can't even pull these up at the moment. Thomas will have them on the screen, but that had him as the wide receiver 20 and a second-year player. A lot of people want to get excited about that. But we were sitting here saying, well, a lot of people are misremembering what happened his second season. While, yeah, the counting stats looked fine, and because he is a monstrous 6'4", 216-pound wide receiver, a lot of people will see him make great catches and go, alpha, dominant. Hell yes. And he goes to the Pro Bowl, even though he has no business in being there. Because if you go and look at the per game numbers from this season, Courtland Sutton was a wide receiver 3. At his very peak, Courtland Sutton was the wide receiver 27 in fantasy, so a high-end wide receiver 3 that 2019 year, his second year. Obviously, in 2020, he tears his ACL. And if you're looking at this season, to go through and look at what's happened since Jerry Jeudy's returned from this offense. If we're looking at his fantasy points, 6, 2, 4, 3, 3, 1, and 3. Courtland Sutton is a straight-up I'm not going to go there. Courtland Sutton has always been an overrated dynasty wide receiver. I currently have Courtland Sutton ranked as our dynasty wide receiver 47. So he's almost a wide receiver 5 for us. I would go through and I would look to sell low on Sutton. Jerry Jeudy, I'm probably going to be looking to hold because there is the outside chance, and this is how I could get burnt, because y'all know I don't really have Jerry Jeudy. I don't really have Courtland Sutton in dynasty. The outside chance you get Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, or Russell Wilson over to Denver, which all have been rumored to go there. Not saying it's likely that any one of them does, but just say there's a 10% chance that, Watson goes, a 10% chance that Rodgers goes, and a 10% chance that Wilson goes. Well, then we actually have to kind of think about, hell, what's going on here? Is there possibly going to be an elite quarterback in Denver? And if that happens, Jerry Jeudy would skyrocket. Right now, over there on Patreon, I have Jerry Jeudy as our wide receiver 27, so as a high-end wide receiver 3. And if you had one of those elite quarterbacks coming over, he would probably jump all the way up into that T. Higgins, DJ Moore range, and he would probably be sitting from wide receiver 27 to about wide receiver 15, wide receiver 16. And now let's go over to our next receiver. This is going to be Michael Thomas. With Michael Thomas, I don't want to speak on this too much just because I simply don't know what to say. I don't know if Michael Thomas got paid that massive contract and now doesn't want to play football anymore. I would love to know I'm not even going to dive into anything. I would just love to know your opinion in the comment section. With Michael Thomas, this is a wide receiver that, yes, does end up getting drafted in that 2016 draft class. So I know it seems like he shouldn't be that old, but surprisingly he is. He's going to be 29 this offseason. He's about the same age, a little bit younger than someone that we previously discussed in DeAndre Hopkins. And with Michael Thomas, I'd be significantly more concerned about this injury with Michael Thomas, as we don't have an entire career of him playing 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, 16 games over and over again, as you've seen with someone like Hopkins. So I know with Michael Thomas, that's already baked into his dynasty price tag. We actually just took him, I believe, in a best ball draft in about the 6th round. I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are on Michael Thomas, however. And then our next receiver on this list was someone that I was rostering in redraft leagues. Don't have a lot in Dynasty. is going to be Allen Robinson. And with Allen Robinson, I mean, going back to that 2019 season, I mean, a wide receiver one in 2020. Also, obviously, Allen Robinson was at the very top. And with A-Rob, obviously has suffered the injury this year. But even if we're looking at a points per game basis, so we're going through and removing the injury games, Allen Robinson was the wide receiver 79 at the time of this recording. Keep in mind, when this video comes out, I'll be in Mexico. So maybe this next weekend changes some things. But here with Allen Robinson, so a wide receiver that's averaged 7.3 fantasy points per game. This is behind the following receivers. Allen Robinson scored less points on a per game basis than these other receivers: Cedric Wilson, Khalif Raymond, Robbie Anderson, McCole Hardman, Traquan Smith, Randall Cobb, KJ Osborne, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Dante Pettis, Marquez Callaway, Deontay Harris, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Quintus Cephas, Jamison Crowder, Tim Patrick. I don't even know what to say here. Allen Robinson was horrendous. And what I want everybody who has Allen Robinson to do is hold on tight for now, because Allen Robinson is going to be a free agent this offseason. I mean, this was a wide receiver that was put into a very bad situation, and clearly he did not come through in that situation. I don't know how much of that we can be holding against him. However, I think I'll probably be washing my hands of Allen Robinson where I have him once he signs. Once he goes to a new situation, you always see those receivers whenever they have a chance to leave elsewhere. Usually they stay in division. Would it be that surprising if the Green Bay Packers go, you know what, we really want to keep Rodgers. Let's go sign Allen Robinson. Let's go pay a premium for him. Hopefully this can keep Aaron Rodgers happy. I think that's a real possibility. And if that were to happen, I'm going through and I'm going to be selling Allen Robinson. And now let's go to our next receiver. This is going to be the combination of Jacksonville Jaguars in Laviska Shenault and DJ Chark. And I've seen DJ Chark where he's going in Dynasty startup drafts right now. I will say DJ Chark is way too expensive for my taste. If you're looking at our Dynasty rankings on where we have the combination of DJ Chark as well as Laviska Shenault, I have Laviska Shenault as our wide receiver 49 and DJ Chark as our wide receiver 50. And I had them both significantly higher than this coming into the season. I liked both receivers coming into the season. But now we have to be realistic with where we stand, because both Laviska Shenault and DJ Chark will be with their third coaching staffs in their NFL careers. Their third. You're also going to get Travis Etienne coming in from this injury. Travis Etienne should have a significant role in this offense. And it's not like you're getting Laviska Shenault, outplayed by DJ Chark. It's not like, you have those top end receivers like DJ Chark and Marvin Jones taking all the volume here, and Laviska Shenault can't do anything. Right now, Laviska Shenault's playing in an offense where Laquan Treadwell is getting a decent amount of run. Laquan Treadwell is out there playing just as many snaps as Laviska Shenault, seeing targets at the same time, and Shenault's not really doing anything. And I know a lot of people want to just take the assumption and take the high road. That's, almost just a common viewpoint at this point, that this offense is going to completely turn around without Urban Meyer. And now, trust me, I am also of the same opinion that everybody else is, that Urban Meyer was possibly the worst head coach that the NFL has seen in the past 5 years. I'm right there with you. I understand Urban Meyer was horrible. But with that being said, to assume that you remove Urban Meyer and this situation is completely fixed, you're living in just a fairyland if you think that's going to happen. You're in Candyland. I don't know where you are. You're out there with Tinkerbell. It's not going to happen. Drastic moves have to be made. I know a lot of people want to go through and say the same thing with Chicago and Justin Fields and Matt Nagy, saying, okay, well, we get rid of Matt Nagy, and then Justin Fields he's right back up there. Trevor Lawrence, they're right there where they need to be. How many teams have been able to go out there and identify above average to good NFL coaches? We really think you get rid of these bad coaches, and then there's just a long line of, Sean McVay's, Kyle Shanahan's, and Bill Belichick to walk through the door and fix the day. It's so hard to expect that to happen. The most likely scenario is they replace Urban Meyer and then they get another bad head coach in there. And it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, an organization that has proven to really not be competent at all over the past decade. One thing that someone that is way better at Dynasty Fantasy Football told me probably back in 2015, and this was back in the days that, I mean, you had just a horrible Cleveland Browns team that was going to be going through and playing winless seasons. They said, you know what? A really smart rule of thumb is to just avoid the players in rookie drafts that are going to the worst offenses in the worst situations in the NFL. Avoid those guys that are going to the Jacksonville Jaguars, because for those situations to actually turn around, for the Jacksonville Jaguars to become an above average NFL offense, drastic changes need to be made that it's really hard to actually see how that gets done, because if it was easy to fix, it would have been fixed by now. So I think with Laviska Shenault, with DJ Chark, I don't know what their roles look like next year. I don't share the opinion that everybody else does, that this is just going to be a great offense the second Urban Meyer leaves. I'm worried about Trevor Lawrence. I'm worried about Justin Fields and what we were just saying in Chicago. That's why at the beginning of the season, whenever we were looking at how bad they had been so far, we were just saying, hit the panic button, sell low, cash out now. Yes, you're selling at a slight loss, but I think that the arrow is just trending down from here, and you're going to get less and less and less as the season progresses. But please let me know what y'all think. Let me know if you think that I am wrong, but we are plummeting Laviska Shenault as well as DJ Chark in our rankings. And I think that should be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, even though you probably didn't. Make sure you go down there, subscribe to the channel only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And of course, you can go check out our rankings over there on Patreon. You can get into a league with us over there on Patreon. You get an in-depth podcast breaking down your Dynasty team over there on Patreon. And you can find all those links below. Thank you so much, and hope you have a great day.